Director of Ceremonies, our Provincial Development Coordinator, Comrade Nguwe, Minister of State for Mat South for Provincial Affairs and Devolution, Comrade Nguwe again, Mayors and Town Clerks here present, Chairmen and CEOs of our RDCs, government officials, ladies and gentlemen, good morning to you all. We are here to share our ideas, to share our thoughts, to share our strategies, to share with you the direction, the developmental direction that we are going to take as Minister of National Housing and Social Amenities in our bid to provide housing for Zimbabweans, houses that will speak to Vision 2030. Honorable Minister, you are aware that in 2018, the President of the Republic of Zimbabwe, His Excellency, Comrade Cde Simbanegavi, pronounced a vision which must see Zimbabwe attaining an upper middle income economy status by 2030, which we are styling Vision 2030. We have a role in our various spheres or workstations in ensuring that that vision becomes a reality. The President has provided with us a political direction. As people that are on the ground, yourselves and us, must now provide the technical direction. And the technical direction that we are going to provide as Ministry of National Housing and Social Amenities is to drive the President's agenda with respect to provision of sustainable, affordable, and modern housing. Modern housing to every Zimbabwean. We are all aware that there are two pillars that are so critical to us in the Constitution, in our national Constitution. Number one is the right to shelter. Every Zimbabwean has got a right to shelter. Number two is every Zimbabwean has got a right to human dignity. Those two pillars work hand in glove. If you have got a decent shelter, you have got the right to dignity, to human dignity. If you don't have a decent shelter, your dignity is also compromised. Having seized with those two critical pillars in our Constitution, those fundamental rights, the President saw it necessary and fit to create a ministry that deals completely with the provision of affordable, sustainable social housing. Sustainable with respect to climate change. The designs that we are going to be implementing going forward must be resistant to the effects of climate change, must withstand the effects of drought, must withstand the effects of floods, must withstand the effects of earth tremors. I can take you to what happened in Chimanimani 2 years ago, where floods came and swept thousands and thousands of people in their homes, and up to now some have been recovered. I can also take you to Binga a few months ago, I think in February, where about 38 families lost everything that they had because of the effects of floods. So we are saying, going forward, we now need to develop buildings, houses, amenities that are resistant to climate change. That is the key function of the ministry. How do we achieve it? Our role is to promote and facilitate as Minister of National Housing and Social Amenities. We will be working obviously closely with other line ministries, the Minister of Local Government and Public Works, the Ministry of SMEs, the Ministry of Home Affairs, the Ministry of Legal Affairs, in delivering houses, institutional accommodation, schools, clinics, hospitals to Zimbabweans. As we stand here, Honorable Minister, Zimbabwe has got a waiting list, a housing waiting list of up to 2 million people. Effective demand of that 2 million people is about 1.5 million. The other 500,000 is cancelled by virtue of people double listing, in various other areas, or some other small mistakes that are done through compiling of information. So the effective demand for housing in Zimbabwe stands at 1.5 million. And that's what we must collectively work together to provide. I'm aware that in 2018, the President announced the Command Housing Initiative, where we are supposed to be delivering 470,000 houses by year 2023. We are all aware of the challenges that we have gone through from 2018 to date. The effects of drought, which affected our agricultural season, the natural disaster that I've been talking about, and currently COVID-19 hasn't spared treasury in terms of the coffers. So we had to revise our figures from 470,000 houses by 2023 to 200,000 houses by 2023. We are well aware that it is possible for us to have built at least buildings, houses, institutional accommodation, social amenities amounting to 200,000 number by year 2023. How are we going to be funding these programs? The funding, number one, is coming from Treasury, as is the case, we all know that. Funding, number two, is coming from the private sector. We've had several meetings with our private sector players, the banking community, insurance companies and pension funds, our corporate world, members of the international community, members of the international community in terms of the banks. We have spoken to all of them, and they're all coming on board. We are working with banks. We've started working with banks as I'm talking to you right now. We have got National Building Society. We are working with them on a number of programs. We have got ZB Bank. We are working with them on a number of projects in Rua and in Zishawani. We are talking to CAPS, we are talking to FBC Bank, we are talking to POSB in terms of looking for land. The finances are there. What is not there for now is land. We have had serious discussions with these institutions and said government does not have adequate financial resources to be funding all these initiatives on its own. What government has got is land. And we want to create partnerships or form partnerships or create concepts and models that ensures that the partners, the development partners I have spoken about, come on board with the financial resources, and government comes with land. We form special purpose vehicles which are critical to every developmental area. If we are talking to pension funds and insurance companies, we'll create and form a special purpose vehicle, identify land in our urban areas and our rural areas, and motivate developments along those lines. They will provide the funding, we will provide the land. We are aware, Honourable Minister, that up to 60% of our civil service are domiciled in the rural areas. The majority of our teachers, to be more specific, are all in the rural areas, and some other civil servants, nurses and doctors. They also need accommodation just like people that are working and living in the urban areas. We want now to have a reverse engineering in terms of motivating people from moving away from urban areas to rural areas by providing the same facilities that we are enjoying in urban areas in our RDCs. We want to go to Mzimwani and say, here we are. What is the corner of Mzimwani comprised of? What type of houses can we develop here? What type of investors can we bring here? So that we create accommodation in Mzimwani, so that a youth or a woman in Mzimwani does not need to dream about coming to Gwanda for work, or coming to Bulawayo for work. We want to be providing the same facilities in the RDCs. This is one of the key reasons why we said we want to be speaking with you, because you have the land. I know the Honorable Minister says that we don't have land. I know for housing purposes we have got the land. We are not looking for huge tracts of land because the dynamics have changed. We are not going to be building horizontally. We are going to be building vertically, even in the rural communities. We want to be building blocks of flats up to 4 floors, what are called walk-up flats. We are aware of what I'm talking about. We find them here in Bulawayo, we find them in Harare, we find them in Mutare Gweru. We want to have that kind of accommodation delivered in our RDCs. That's deliverable number 1, which will be able to take us from Bulawayo to Gwanda, from Gwanda to Umzimwani, to Plumtree. That is the idea. The advantages of that initiative is we will be able to decongest our already congested urban areas, congested in terms of the infrastructure, the roads, the water, the sewer, and the energy. So now, seized with these disasters, whether they are waterborne diseases, whether there are potholes on the roads, whether there is no electricity, whether there is no water, we are all aware of the causes of that. The key cause is these towns and cities were developed with a specific population. When we attained our independence in 1980, all of us from everywhere we were stationed, we ran to the nearest urban center. But we did not compensate that movement, that exponential growth in population in urban centers, by designing or revisiting or redeveloping our social amenities, our infrastructure, to accommodate the increase in the population. So the increase in the population was not matched with an increase in the service provision. This is the result of what happened. All our cities, it's not that there are no services, it's not that we can't provide services, but the systems that are there now cannot accommodate the increase, the exponential increase in population. So we now going to take a deliberate decision to create an influence, a movement from the urban centers to the peri-urban centers to the rural RDCs, and provide those much needed services in the RDCs, including Wi-Fi. Because Wi-Fi is now such an integral part of our existence, particularly from the young generations, the youth. They can't survive without Wi-Fi. Anyone who lives around a youth understands what I'm talking about. Their life becomes so miserable if there is no internet. So internet has become part of the services that needs to be provided into any development going forward. Honorable Minister, to those who do not appreciate Vision 2030, this is like a dream which will never come to reality. But we are all aware of the developments that are happening around our communities. You go to Botswana, Francis Town is now a city. You agree with me? You go to South Africa via Messina, Messina is now a city. Those who have traveled, you go to Asia, you go to Malaysia, you go to Singapore, you go to China. And in the Middle East, you go to Dubai. It's all urbanized. What was being called the New World prior to COVID-19. COVID-19 has brought in what we're calling the new normal. But construction, innovation, and recreation created what is now called the New World. And the New World speaks very well into Vision 2030 as pronounced by the President. We are aware of the challenges that are there. One of the challenges is the land, the availability of land that you spoke about. The other challenge is the informal settlements that are around our towns and growth points. I will speak in detail about those challenges. Let me come to the land issue. Zimbabwe is a country whose economy is predominantly agriculture. If we continue providing housing on an expansive horizontal approach, we will be eating into agricultural land. By the time we finish building houses in this country, there will be no land for agriculture. We will have created a new disaster of hunger. So government is now aware of that. And we are deliberately saying we are not going to focus more on single-story houses. We are going to focus more on vertical construction. Our vertical spaces are so open and open and open, and they need to be utilized. We are limiting ourselves to 4 floors because of other challenges, the energy challenges. We don't have adequate energy right now to drive our lifts to 60 floors, to 70 floors, to 120 floors. But we limit it to 4 floors and create walk-up flats. Even working spaces with respect to working stations for our SMEs must now be vertical. We are fully aware of the need to provide decent industrial accommodation, decent commercial accommodation for our business community, particularly the SMEs. Being fully aware of the fact that our SMEs are playing a very significant role in our economic activities in this country. And also being fully aware of the need to capture the rates that are not being paid by the SMEs or the taxes that they are not paying because they are not operating in a controlled or managed environment. So we want to be providing those amenities as a new ministry. We speak with yourselves through local government. You provide us with land, we will provide what is necessary. The finance industry, through the players that we have spoken with, are so ready now to partner government in the turnaround of infrastructure fortunes of our country. Let me come back to challenges. In year 2000, government, with the same desire that we have today to provide accommodation for people, invited private land developers and cooperative leaders to come and join government in providing the much needed services, much needed infrastructure. They were given tracts and tracts of land to develop and sell as stands to home-seeking innocent people. Alas, what happened is not what we expected. The land, the people, the private land developers and the cooperatives, whom we are now calling land barons, decided to take that land for own use. They decided to sell and service the land to desperate home seekers. They decided to allocate, double allocate, in certain instances, multiple allocate the same piece of land to several people. That created a lot of chaos. Chaos which we are seeing right around every urban area right now. Chaos where we now have houses where there is no road, there is no water, there is no sewer, there is no energy. We are reminded of the fact that an upper middle economy status country must have those services for it to qualify. So government has now taken a deliberate and very critical position that land barons must be brought to book. That land barons must dance to the tune or else they'll be kicked out. That we must now sanitize all informal settlements going forward. And the Minister of National Housing and Social Amenities, in collaboration with the Minister of Local Government, like I said before, Minister of Justice and Legal Affairs, Minister of Home Affairs, will work as a collective to ensure that we've sanitized all these illegal settlements. We are not going to demolish houses as is being said by opposition forces. We are not going to do that. But we are going to bring in planners and engineers to design roads that suit the developments that have taken place. Of course, in the process, 1 or 2 houses can be sacrificed because where a road is supposed to be constructed, it must be constructed. But be that as it may, those people will be resettled where we're going to be building these walk-up flats I've spoken about. But the initial launch right now, and we're going to be doing it this week in Bulawayo, is to reconfigure it, to regularize, to sanitize all informal settlements. The land barons must come to the party, or we are not sympathetic with them. We are very sympathetic to the desperate home seekers who went through a lot of pain and suffering because of the behavior of land barons and the cooperative leaders. We are sympathetic to that. This is why government is saying we are inviting financial partners to come on board, work with us to provide the much needed infrastructure. Two critical components that we are going to be providing is green energy and Wi-Fi. We are all aware of the devastating effects of drought that has affected this country for the past 3-4 seasons. Our generating capacity for hydropower has been hugely compromised. Kariba Dam is at about 43% full. It's not now capable of generating the same amount of electricity that we would require. Wange is suffering from age. The equipment is old. So it can't generate the amount of thermal power that we require. The only way out is to go green. Solar energy is the way. Wind energy in some instances is the way. And that's what we're going to be doing. We're going to be inviting companies that are specializing in the provision of green energy to ensure that every development that we're going to do will be accompanied by green energy and Wi-Fi. I was talking to some people yesterday about the benefits of going vertical in construction. First, you cut the cost of road network. If you are going horizontal and single story, you need several roads that leads into several houses. You need a lot of water and sewer network in terms of pipework into the various houses. But if it's vertical, you have your one straight road, blocks of flats this side and blocks of flats that side. You then have 2 trenches to cater for your water, sewer, even Wi-Fi and electricity in the same trench. So there are massive costs in terms of the infrastructure, massive cost reductions. Those are the benefits of going upstairs. The other benefit is we save our agricultural land. So the major challenge, which we are going to launch here, Honorable Minister, is sanitization of all informal settlements. We are aware now that there is the same existence of informal settlements even in Banda, even in Beitbridge. We will be visiting those areas. The ministry very soon will be capacitated with the necessary resources to ensure that we have got our people on the ground, in the RDCs, in your towns, everywhere, to supervise the sanitization of these programs and also supervise the construction of new programs going forward. We are talking to Minister of Local Government. We want people to be provided with title deeds for their homes. We are aware of the backlog. It's a major challenge, but it's a challenge that Minister of Local Government is seized with right now, and they are working flat out. Their Department of Fiscal Planning and other consulting planners are working to ensure that every development that is there is titled, is surveyed and titled. It's critical. Everybody, after paying for your house, you want to have your papers. If you so decide to sell, you want to sell on the basis of a paper that it belongs to me. As it is right now, if you collapse and die, the land baron who sold you that stand yesterday will send the same stand to somebody else before you are even buried. Because there is no relationship between you and that stand other than the invoice that could be fictitious that was given by the land baron. So we want to correct that as well. And that will be corrected through the Minister of Local Government and Public Works. In conclusion, Honorable Minister, let me conclude by thanking your team for coming, you and your team for coming. And we want Our plea to the RDCs and towns is let's work together. Please make land available for development purposes. Please stop now the issuing of land to individuals. Government is no longer promoting the issuance of land to general people as developers, who are masquerading as developers. All the development programs are taking place either through the Ministry of National Housing and Social Amenities, if they are institutional accommodation, through public works. So we must go back home knowing very well that if we start transacting land-wise with individuals, we are committing a crime. It's a crime that can send you to jail. This is not a threat, but I'm stating a statement of fact. Provincial Administrator, it's a statement of fact. Please encourage our members to discourage them rather not to continue selling land. And if there are any land barons who are here, because I know the land barons, I could be a land baron, but without disclosing my identity. So I know there are land barons in here. Please go back home and cooperate with the Minister of National Housing and Social Amenities when we come to regularize those areas. We are not going to be kicking people in any direction. We're not going to do that. We want to work as a collective. Yourselves and us as government, let's work together to provide decent accommodation for desperate home seekers, to provide decent accommodation that speaks to Vision 2030, to provide social amenities, which is in terms of schools, clinics, hospitals, to Zimbabweans. We are aware of Zimbabweans who are now farmers, who are settled into the bush, vast tracts of land which white commercial farmers were keeping. They need services there as well. We have a program that we're going to be launching as well of providing septic tanks and soakaways in the rural communities. We can't speak to Vision 2030 if people are still using that old technology of an open well and a pit latrine. It will not work. Whether you are in the urban areas or in the rural areas, it's outdated. We want to provide the technology where septic tanks and soakaways are key. I'm happy to advise you that DDF is already on the ground. They are drilling boreholes, a lot of boreholes throughout the country. So the water will be there for us to flush our systems in the houses. We also need you to educate our traditional leaders so that they educate the citizens in the need to move away, to migrate now from pit latrines and wells to septic tanks and soakaways in their areas of residence. We are also discouraging profusely the continued cutting of trees and building houses. The poor and dagger technology is outdated now. If it exists, let it exist for tourist purposes, so that people who are coming from Europe are coming here, they must be able to be directed to an area where there is a nice thatched house, which is poor and dagger, for purposes of tourism. But ourselves, let's now move to bricks and the new technology that is there. Our plea once more, we want to be working closely with yourselves to be dealing with the issues that are bedeviling our economy in terms of the provision of affordable houses for everybody. We are not looking only at 2023, we are looking at getting into 2030 and beyond. We are aware of the problems that were caused by the previous regime. We are also aware, even in our individual capacities, that we are responsible for our ancestors' problems. So the new dispensation is accountable to the problems, ills, and evils that were created by the past regimes, particularly the Smith regime. We are still paying the reparations right now. But we must be charged with the responsibility of dealing with those problems until Zimbabwe becomes an upper middle income economy. Honorable Minister, thank you.
All due respect to our ministers and everyone in the room, I would kindly request the Minister to shed more light on the point where he emphasizes that land cannot be sold to individuals. I think as local authorities, we are obviously keen to know the individuals that we cannot sell land to, because we have been selling land to individuals. So I think we need some clarification regarding the sale of land to individuals. Thank you.
Ama local authorities imali yethu siyithola ngokuthengisa iland. So boningani Minister Cde ingathengisela kuma individual okumela kumfowethu lapha ukuthi phoke sesizayithatha ngaphi imali yikho lapho esile mali yethu siyithola khona kakhulu.
With all the respect to our ministers and everybody here, all protocols observed, some of us, we have actually invested on our lands by servicing stands in our areas, and we are hoping to get our monies back by selling that land. And if we are to stop selling this land, that means we have no way to recover our monies. In particular, in my case, in Umzingwane, we are developing 600 high-density stands, and we have finished servicing those 600 stands. Roads network has been done, the sewer pipes have been laid, and also we are developing 300 medium size stands, which we are in the process of selling. And we are planning also to sell its own plan, that we also increase this development by developing at a Mawawini growth point, where we are aiming at 100 stands to be serviced if all processes and procedures and local development plan as well as physical planning and pegging is done. I don't know how best the minister can help us there. And the other challenge which we're having is that we have finished laying down all the pipes, but ZANU is not able to connect water to further enable us to develop further and our contractors to carry on the development projects.
It's one person has three different ways. It's about selling of land. Let me be clear. Maybe the general is very specific. We are making reference to selling of land, illegal selling of land to land barons. That's what we're referring to. We are referring to selling of land, particularly wetlands. It's happening in towns and cities, particularly in Ghana. Don't sell wetlands. By selling wetlands, we are selling our souls. If you are developing, like I said, maybe you said you are developing 600 stands. We encourage that. Develop itself in the proper legal manner. The sale of land that we are discouraging is that which we do nicotimus to Garwe. Knowing fully well that Garwe is not a bona fide land developer. Garwe then takes that land and sell it to several people illegally, collecting people's money and putting it in his pockets. There is no development that is there, there are no roads, there is no water, there is no sewer. That's why we've got these informal settlements. Those are the sales that we are referring to. The sales that you are doing under normal circumstances in the course of your discharging of your duties, we are not getting into that.
We agreed, we want to be doing that together with yourselves. Where you need our assistance, please call us. But we are not saying don't sell land for purposes of normal growth of the city or town or RDC. We are not saying that. Please don't misquote me. The sales that must be denied or must be rejected categorically is the sale that takes place nicodemously. to individuals like myself who have no capacity whatsoever to develop that place, to develop it into stands for onward selling to home seekers. That must be discouraged at all costs. But what you are referring to, what you do on a daily basis, is not affected in any way possible. I hope I have answered the whole 3 questions in one. There is the issue about ZANU. ZANU falls under another ministry. All we can do is to further your causes through the right channels to ensure that the issue is attended to. Otherwise, as a line minister, I'm not competent enough to make comments when another line ministry. It's ultra bias. I will not do that. But let me re-emphasize that there are also private developers that are bona fide. You know them yourselves. Those ones who have no issues with them, continue doing business with them in the normal course of doing business. It's those individuals, we know them, who have caused the pain and suffering to every home seeker, whom we have got issues with. And we don't want you to aid their activities by continuing selling land to them at the expense of normal courses of doing business. There are other private developers who have done so well. We must commend them, and we must continue doing business with them. I hope I have done justice to the 3 questions.
Meeting here, wanting to plan as part of the nation in a time that is probably has some fear. And therefore I'm saying, whom shall I fear when the Lord is my provider? So even as we pray, let's keep this scripture in mind. Let us pray. Father, we come before you even this particular morning. How we want to thank you for your providence. How we want to thank you for your mercy that you've allowed us to be here, come and congregate here and to begin to plan for the nation. We ask and invite the Holy Spirit to be among us so that it inspires us and gives us divine wisdom throughout these proceedings. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Acting Provincial Development Coordinator, ZANU, local authorities here present, our DAs here present, invited guests, ladies and gentlemen. It is my humility that I warmly welcome you all to this meeting, the first in the province between our housing delivery institution and the Minister of National Housing and Social Amenities. Honorable Minister, your calling for this engagement shows government commitment with regards to housing delivery in our people. This is in line with the guidance of His Excellency, the President of the Republic of Zimbabwe, Comrade Dr. Emerson Mnangagwa, in Vision 2030, when we strive to provide habitable and client-centered housing as one of our goals. For us to achieve that, we have to conduct our housing planning in accordance with the National Housing Policy dictates. To that end, let me call for our local authorities to continue taking a leading role in planning of housing infrastructure in line with our planning statutes. I believe our meeting today will unlock more forums for engagement as we strive to address challenges we find in our housing sector as a province. It is also my hope that going ahead, we have to embrace the whole government approach in housing delivery. This brings together all relevant stakeholders involved in the housing delivery. Honorable Minister, ladies and gentlemen, Material North, like any other provinces, has a high demand of housing infrastructure, especially for our public officers. I therefore call upon investors in the housing delivery to partner with the government in addressing this issue. Allow me, therefore, to wish everyone here a fruitful engagement and wish you safe travel back to your station. I also want to remind everyone the need to observe COVID-19 containment regulations. I want to thank you,
I greet everyone, and I'm also going to introduce our guest of honor today, who is also the Member of Parliament for Rewa East, and he has been newly appointed by His Excellency, the President of Zimbabwe, to be the Minister of National Housing and Social Amenities, and he has taken his time to come down here and meet us today. His name is Honorable Minister Garwe.
Good morning, everybody.
Morning.
It's not cold today, at least we must show some pleasant faces. Our program director, acting provincial director, acting provincial development coordinator, yes, Mama Hamini, the Minister of State for Provincial Affairs and Devolution, Honorable Richard Moyo, the Deputy Minister for Minister of National Housing and Social Amenities, Minister Simbanegavi, Acting Chief Director Urban Housing, Baba Kwanda, Acting Director for Urban Housing, Mr. Gotora, Directors here present from the Ministry of Local Government and Public Works, CEOs and Chairmen of various RDCs who are present, ladies and gentlemen, once more, Saliwonan. Honorable Minister, after the President's vision or the realization that as a country we need to have a roadmap, the President pronounced a vision in 2018, a vision styled as Vision 2030, a vision which says Zimbabwe must achieve an upper middle income economy status by year 2030. The President then decided to create a fully fledged ministry that deals with issues to do with national housing and social amenities. National housing is a broad-based definition. Housing with respect to residential accommodation, housing with respect to industrial accommodation, housing with respect to social amenities. I'm referring to schools, clinics, recreational facilities, all those fall under housing and social amenities. Critical among all of them is the residential accommodation. Honorable Minister, we were then given a vision and a mission statement and a mandate which must guide us in our deliverables. Put simply, the vision of this ministry is to promote and facilitate the provision of social housing or the provision of human settlements that speak to sustainability, human settlements that speak to modernity, human settlements that speak to affordability. Human settlement is all-encompassing, talks about the various types of housing that I mentioned earlier on. Those three pillars or three characteristics define what this ministry stands for. Sustainability, modernity, and affordability. What do we refer to by affordability, by sustainability? We are referring to designs and programs, buildings that are sensitive to the effects or the impact of climate change. Climate change, referring to the effects of floods. We know what happened in Binga. We are aware of what happened in Chimanimani, Cyclone Idai. designs that can resist any earth tremors, including earthquakes. You are aware from time to time Zimbabwe experiences some earth tremors. And when that shaking happens, some of our buildings develop major cracks, or some of them actually collapse. That's sustainability. Changes in weather patterns. It can be raining, it can be very dry. All that affects the stability of our buildings. So the designs must speak to that. Modernity. Designs that speak into the future. And 2030 is the future. We have at least about 10 years from now to get into 2030. So there is a deliberate call by government to all our engineers, design engineers and design architects, to reconsider their designs as they design houses, office accommodation, schools, clinics, shopping malls, everything that has got a roof. That's the modernity we're talking about. I am now on record giving examples of gables and hips. The majority of people seated in this august house were born in three types of designs. Either it's a round hut, pole and dagger thatch, or it's a gable, or it's a hipped roof. Those are the three. Our children were born in those, and their children, unfortunately, are going to be born in those. So the president is now looking at the future, having traveled around the globe, having seen what other countries are doing. You go to Asia, Far East, you see modern designs in China, you see modern designs in Singapore, you see modern designs in Malaysia. You go to the Middle East, you see designs that you've never seen in this world, in Dubai, in Abu Dhabi. In fact, the United Arab Emirates as a country has no natural resource which it can serve as a tourist attraction center. But it has turned that desert into the biggest tourist attraction center by its buildings. People go to Dubai for two things, either for shopping or just admire the buildings. That is the speech to modernity that the president is referring to in this vision. You come to Africa, South Africa is not lagging behind. They are moving extremely fast, at least in their urban areas, in developing their designs to meet such standards. Botswana is also on the race. Zambia has joined everybody. Namibia has joined. So the whole SADC region has hit the core to modernize their structures. We must not be seen lagging behind Zimbabwe. Imagine how beautiful Zimbabwe is. You go to Victoria Falls, the natural features that have been granted. If those were being complemented with modern designs, the amount of tourists that will be coming to Victoria Falls will be out of this world. We are the founders of architecture, modern day architecture, in terms of our great Zimbabwe. It has withstood the sustainability requirements that I have spoken about. So architecture did not start in Europe, it started in Africa, and it started in Zimbabwe, but it's stolen and then it developed in Europe. We now need to send our children all over the world to go and learn how to design architecture when we have got it here in Mashingo. Even engineering, design engineering started at Great Zimbabwe. Those structures have withstood the effects of the deadliest earth tremors you can imagine. This is the sustainability aspect. I've spoken about, I'm not getting to the affordability aspect. In terms of the Zimbabwean constitution, every Zimbabwean citizen has got two critical fundamental rights. One, the right to human dignity. Right to human dignity feeds into the right to shelter. You can't say I am a dignified person if you sleep under a tree or on pavement. You are not a dignified person. So the president is, as a constitutionalist, is now addressing those constitutional requirements to provide shelter for Zimbabweans, to ensure that every Zimbabwean is afforded the right to human dignity. This is what we are looking at going to 2030. It is important for us to understand why this vision, why this ministry. Every line ministry has got its key responsibilities that focuses into going into Vision 2030. Our focus is national housing and social amenities. And that is the line that we're going to be running along. We realize that we cannot do it on our own. Even His Almighty Jesus Christ couldn't do it on His own. He called 12 strong men to assist Him in the gospel. And today we've got Christianity all over the world. So we realized at our smallest level, as a small ministry, that we cannot do it alone. We need the participation of stakeholders, of which the Minister of State for Provincial Affairs and Devolution is a key stakeholder. The RDCs, our towns and cities, are key stakeholders. Our line ministries, particularly the Minister of Local Government and Public Works, the Minister of Justice and Legal Affairs, Minister of Home Affairs, even Minister of Tourism, those are critical partners in the development agenda. It can be done by one ministry and everybody else is watching. The local authorities have got what we don't have. They have got the resource called land. The private sector players, who are also stakeholders, have got what government does not have at the moment, the financial resource. The private sector as well has got the human capital, which government is lacking now, because the majority of our trained personnel have left the country to seeking greener pastures throughout the world. So we are inviting everybody, each one with his skill, in accordance to the portion that God gave you, to participate in the provision of housing and social amenities. If we are to go to Vision 2030, we now need to look at the characteristics of that development. Characteristics in terms of, if you look at the urban centers, what are the characteristics expected of an urban development? An urban development must have roads, serviced roads, must have water systems, it must have sewer systems, it must have energy, now it must also have Wi-Fi. Those are the basic characteristics of a developed area. That's what defines an urban area. And that's what we are now driving through this ministry. And by driving, Honorable Minister and members of the House, we are saying we must now deliberately put to stop the idea of inviting people and give them pieces of land, give them a bush, and they start building houses. And houses start sprucing up like mushroom. There are no roads, no water, no sewer, there's nothing. And these settlements have encircled all our urban areas, cities, towns, and peri-urban areas. I will come to the informal settlements. The President is saying, when we say social housing, when we say affordable housing, what are we looking at and how do we achieve it? We are looking at houses which the ordinary Zimbabwean and civil servants included, our teachers and nurses and other civil servants, should be able either to make a decision to rent and buy, or to outrightly purchase. That's what is covered under social housing. So we've got those three pillars that I've talked about: houses for rental purposes, houses to rent and buy, houses for outright purchases. We have got those three categories in our societies. The people that are in the diaspora, the majority of them qualify on an outright purchase, they've got the foreign currency. The people that are in the business community outright qualify for the outright purchase because they've got the money. Our civil servants qualify for the two, rent to buy or a rental. Why rent to buy? And I want to motivate every civil servant who doesn't own a house right now to think seriously about that. Wherever you are leasing or renting a house or a room or 2 rooms, you are paying rent. That money is getting out of your hand and going to someone's pocket and it will not come back. And for 20, 15, 30 years, you'll be renting. At the end of 20 years or 25 years, which is the mortgage period, you have paid rent equivalent to buying a house for yourself through renting. So we are developing a strategy or a model or a concept which gives you an opportunity to pay rent so that after 20 years or so, the house becomes yours. It's a concept that our building societies are developing so that it's given to us as an easy to adopt mortgage facility. We are working on that. The ministry has got several departments. It has got the Department of Finance, Department of Legal Services, Human Resources, Internal Audit, Procurement. Those are service departments. Critical to the ministry's mandate are 3 departments, 4 departments. The Department of Urban Housing, which is currently being headed by Gotora. The Department of Rural Housing, which is being headed by Vasimango, is not here with us. The Department of Construction and Maintenance is not yet filled. We are still looking for people with the requisite expertise. Those departments are critical in our deliverables. So urban housing on one hand and rural housing on the other are critical. Social amenities in the urban areas are equally critical. Social amenities in the rural areas are also very critical. Ladies and gentlemen, let me give you a scenario. We are aware of the congestion or the blockage in terms of service delivery that we're experiencing in all our cities and towns. Bulawayo is one of them. The reason is, in 1980, April 1980, when we got our independence, everybody from every corner of the country rushed to be resident in urban areas, and rightly so. Because the impression that was given by the ex-colonizers then was life, urban areas was where life was, or heaven was equivalent to urban areas. So we wanted to be in that heaven as well. So we said we will leave hell, and it's up now, it's still hell, the rural communities. And that increase in the movement of people from the rural areas to the urban areas was not matched with the development of the infrastructure that was in the urban areas. Both the infrastructure was designed for specific population numbers in every town, in every city. Harare maybe was about 200,000, but we've got 2 million people in Harare now, with infrastructure designed to carry 200,000. The road network had a specific number of vehicles. In fact, they were looking at the number of vehicles from the north, what we call the northern suburbs in Harare. Each house or household had a car, so they calculated that. Then they worked as a percentage from the high density areas. That Makokova, for instance, must have at least the 1% of the population will have a car. 1% of the majority will have a car, and that was the setup. So they designed the roads like that. Fast forward to now, every person, the father has got a car, the mother has got a car, children have got cars under the same roof. The roads that were designed have no capacity to carry that increased population of vehicles. So what are we now doing? We have now taken a deliberate position to say, let's now create a movement, a deliberate movement of people from urban areas back to the rural areas. Not pushing people off urban areas, but a deliberate and motivational movement from urban areas to rural areas. We want to achieve this by providing the same facilities that defines an urban center in our RDCs. And RDCs who are here, hear me. We want to graduate you off from being RDCs to being urban and rural RDCs. You carry an urban arm even though you are called an RDC. We want to provide housing in the RDCs, a house with the standards and characteristics and features that you find in any suburb in the urban areas. We want to provide the road network, we want to provide the sewer and water systems, Wi-Fi and smart and green energy in the RDCs, just like it is in the urban areas. We want to invite investors to move from urban areas and focus on the development of peri-urban areas and RDCs in terms of creation of industrial hubs. We are looking at what drives the economy of Cholocho. What is it that drives the economy of Bubi? What is it that drives the economy of Lupani, Vic Falls? We develop that RDC in recognition of the drivers of its economy. And investors will come, and we've already spoken to them, they are so ready. What has been outstanding is disengagement that we are having now. That will ensure that if you are in Lupani, there is a house in Lupani which meets modern standards. There is water, there is sewer, there is electricity, there is Wi-Fi. There is a shopping mall with the standards that you have seen outside this country. There is Pick and Pay in Cholocho. There is Okem in Cholocho. There is Spa in Bubi. There is the same big shops for clothing in those RDCs. Why would I want to drive or to get into a bus or a chauffeur or a combi to come to Bulawayo for shopping? I will do my shopping at home, save that money that I was going to spend in drive, whether in terms of fuel or in terms of rent of fares, and add it to buying my groceries or my other things that I so desire at home in Bubi. I'm talking of things that are happening in other countries. You go to England today, people in England, the British themselves do not want to stay or live in London because of congestion. You move from one town, one suburb to the other. During peak hours, it will take you 5 hours to drive. So they don't want to stay in London. They go to what they call counties, and their counties are our RDCs here. The difference is ours are not developed. We don't have tarred roads. We don't have all these other service enablers that I've spoken about. And we want to go to that. My honorable sister looking at me with a blue top is asking a very good question. She is saying, where's the money? Her eyes were telling me that she's asking that question. Good Minister, where is the money? We have several sources of funding. The first source of funding, which we are all familiar with, is treasury funding, PSIP. Under the normal course of doing business in government, every ministry is given a budget allocation. So we've got a budget allocation from the Minister of Finance. But we've also decided to jump outside the box of just waiting for PSIP. When it's finished, we stop a project where it is, waiting for the next year to get another allocation. We have jumped out of that box, or we have said, look, if we can't, because we can't jump, bring a new box so that we think within a new box. The new box or the outside box thinking is we have gone to the private sector to look for funding, and we have got it. We have approached financial institutions, banks, building societies. We have approached pension funds and insurance companies in this country, and we have said, we want you to participate in the provision of human settlements. Government does not have all the required financial resources to fulfill this mammoth task, because it's a mammoth task. But we know we have got that which we don't have, and we have that which we don't have, and we have it. It's an affordable price. What is it that they have? They've got the money, and we've got the land. Some of the land that we have is domiciled in our RDCs. That's why we invited you. We want to bring the pension funds, and we are also aware of the fact that pension funds, under their act, the act that governs them, allows them to plow 20% of their profits into social housing. It was not being followed, and people decided to keep quiet because they were enjoying it quietly. We have called them on board. We had serious meetings with them, discussions. We said to them, we don't want you to bring money, even that 20%. We don't want you to give it to us and you get nothing out of it. Let's create a relationship. Let's develop a concept or concepts that ensures that we are equal partners in the development program. You come with the resources. We create a special purpose vehicle whose shareholding will consist of the stakeholders, yourselves and officers from our ministry. You come in with land, with money. We will provide land at intrinsic value. Why intrinsic value? We are answering to the core of social housing. If the cost of land is affordable, the final cost of the house will be affordable. And we are saying the cost of the money also must be affordable, both in the social housing, and they've agreed. Some of them were saying, oh, our money is eaten by inflation. You remember in 2008 when the dollar crashed, we were left with nothing. Everybody was left with nothing. I said, I hear you, but you're not telling the truth. Let me now remind you of the truth. The dollar crashed, we agree. The people that suffered when the dollar crashed are the beneficiaries of the pension fund, the contributors. They are the ones who lost outrightly. Because you were telling them the dollar has crashed, we can't disburse anything to yourselves, you can't receive anything. So they went home miserably and languished in the rural areas, in the high density areas. Some of them have since passed on. We said we can't now call those people and say give them their money. But we know you did not lose outright yourselves as Old Mutual or as FMI, First Mutual Life, or as ZESA Pension Fund or the Mining Industry Pension Fund. You did not lose completely. You stored the value of that money because you invested it into real estate. The buildings that you find in urban areas are owned by pension funds. It's a statement of fact. The pension funds don't have the money belongs to the people that were contributing through their pension. Some of them are here. So we said, because we can't get the money, but we know you can participate in this program, join us, provide affordable financing, and we provide the land, and we build social housing. On the three concepts I said earlier on, rental housing, rent-to-buy housing, or outright purchase. They agreed to that. We visited our building societies and said, your mortgage facility is no longer applicable given the economic environment in the country. We are 70% of the business community are SMEs. SMEs who are not formalized. You ask them to bring a payslip. He cannot generate a payslip for himself because he's not employed. He's self-employed. But he has got capacity For as long as its payment towards the house has got capacity to come and pay every month, it has been proven. We are paying rent in US dollars here. Imagine if we are paying that rent that you are paying in US dollars towards a house that is going to be yours, and a simple document is prepared, a 3-page document, which is not difficult to read and understand, and that document is filed with the attorneys that manages it, then you know there is a shelter above your children, even after yourself. They will carry on the facility until it matures. So that has been agreed upon. The building societies are developing those concepts. I'm pleased to advise you that we are working very closely with the ZB Bank, their building society arm. We are working very closely with NASA and National Building Society. POSB is so keen to get into the rural communities because their clientele is based in the rural communities. Their clientele is majority teachers. So they are so happy to come to Bubi and invest in Bubi. Other banks have followed. They've realized that there is serious business here. They are now on each other's back coming to our offices. We went further and had discussions with the mining houses. We said the history in this country is such that when the mine has gone through its economic life, the miner packs his bags, abandons the mine, leaves people's destitutes, and off he goes back to England or America or Germany, France and Italy. We don't want that to continue. Yes, we appreciate that you provide accommodation for your employees. What about a person who is your employee today and tomorrow you fire him? He becomes a destitute. What then happens if you decide to close your mine, like you always threaten to do? That whole community become destitute. We want you to provide finance because we have got it, and we'll give you the land in the RDCs we are operating from. We build houses for your employees on a rent to buy basis. They get it. They accept it. In all other companies, Dairy Board, Nestle Zimbabwe, Schweppes, this beer manufacturing company, what is it called? Delta. They accepted that. So those are the financial models that we have, domestically speaking. We then went outside our borders before COVID and spoke to a number of investors in South Africa, in the Middle East, even in China. We had expressed interest to come and join the party. We even spoke to Pan-African banks, 2 Pan-African banks that are critical to us, that registered a statement of interest, are Shelter Afrique and Afro-Exim Bank. Shelter Afrique is going to the extent of providing lines of credit to our building societies to the tune of $65 million US dollars for social housing. Their mandate, Shelter Afrique, is to provide affordable finance for social housing. It's a bank owned by all African countries, and Zimbabwe is a shareholder in that bank. And the current CEO in that bank is a Zimbabwean, grew up and bred in Mbare. I said to him, when you come back home, before you touch the ground at R.G. Mugabe Airport, we will ask you a question. What is it that you did for your country for the 5 years that you were on duty? He said, let me think about that. The next call was, I have set a facility for 65 million for my country, Zimbabwe. And right now, we're just fine-tuning the paperwork. Those that are tasked with that responsibility are doing that. So the finding Madam Sister is there. What is not there, which we are appealing to all of you, is the willpower. We must have the willpower of Zimbabweans to develop our country ourselves. Let's not wait for foreigners to come and construct for us. There is no village that was constructed by foreigners. I have to find one in any country in the world. So similarly, Zimbabwe can be an exception. If we don't develop our country ourselves as Zimbabweans, no one else will come and develop it. The British did what they did then because in their wild dreams they thought this was their little England in Africa. So that's why they created or developed that best infrastructure outside the Rhodesia, Nyasaland and Northern Rhodesia village. They chose Zimbabwe. They chose Rhodesia then and said, this is us. This is our King Solomon's mines. This is where we're going to be rested in here. We then defeated them, and in 1980, we inherited our inheritance, our King Solomon's mines. Those who read history books, back then, you read about King Solomon's mines. That was in reference to Zimbabwe. We also have, I'm making reference to King Solomon's mines so that I open your minds to the mineral world that we have, whose world is now none other than for us, which we are also going to be using in the development of our infrastructure, human settlements. This is where we are. We also be being reminded of a hard and critical and brutal fact that land is a finite product. As it is a finite product, we have to revisit our design ideas. We can't continue designing and going horizontally, expansively. We have got vertical spaces that we've never utilized. So we are encouraging RDCs to design, to plan now, physical planning who are here from Public Works. We want to plan going vertically. Every development program that is going to take place now must have a deliberate portion set aside for vertical construction. Flats, walk-up flats, 4-5 floors. In the rural communities as well in the urban communities. Because we want to get people of urban communities enjoy the same facilities in the rural communities. With the state-of-the-art finishes, everything. But let's preserve agricultural land. Let's preserve our forests. Let's preserve our environment. Because if we go expansively and horizontal, 30 years from today, there will be no Musasa tree to talk about. There will be no Mpani tree to talk about. Our great-grandchildren will read history about the resources that are supposed to be theirs because we will have failed ourselves in our planning. I'm happy that the provincial director for planning is here. Is hearing me. We want to be working very closely with Public Works in terms of physical planning responsibilities and the general planning aspects, the master plan and everything, so that we preserve, like in this part of the country, we want to preserve those beautiful forests that we have. People are just cutting trees willy-nilly, creating spaces for houses. We can have all the houses that we have on the land that we have. The land will not increase in size. After finishing building the houses and we are now seated, we'll be seized with one big question. What do we do about food? We will now become a perpetual beggar from our neighbors for food because we have eaten into agricultural land. So as we go back home, we should be aware of that fact that land is a finite product. It must be preserved. Let's plan to build vertically. Whether we're talking about the flats I'm making reference to, whether they are shopping malls, we must go vertically. Excuse me. We must build vertically. It doesn't matter where you are. We must build strategically, vertically. It must be strategic policy in every RDC, every urban center, that let's gradually move away from this horizontal housing. Zimbabweans are spoiled people, including the leadership ourselves. Spoiled in the sense that we want to own everything that exists in our environment. I must own several houses. I must own several cars. I must own several. In other countries, For as long as there is shelter, I don't necessarily have to own a house. It's a luxury. In Britain, the so-called United Kingdom, 60% of the population live in rented accommodation. But here we want to own. Because of the desire to own, we have created what is called by economists dead capital. If you look at all the houses that are in Matibile, in Bulawayo, they are all paid for. Particularly in the low-density suburbs, they are all paid for. It's dead capital because it's not any income. It's that big double-story house with 13 bedrooms. The children have gone. It's an empty nest. Father and mother, the two left with 13 bedrooms. Because they are not agreeing on certain things. One sleeps in that bedroom, another sleeps, at least they're utilizing another bedroom. But the 11 bedrooms are dead capital. We now need to disabuse ourselves of this big things mentality. And ownership. I want to own it. You can only, even your wife, you don't own her. She's owned by God. We want to own. We are talking to ZIDA, we are talking to our economists to develop models that will ensure that we realize that dead capital and plow it into the housing initiative. How do we do it? Put simply, I have a house on an acre. I'm not earning any money out of it. I'm having to rely on my children to support me because I'm a pensioner now. My pension is not sufficient for my survival. But I can take the same house into a special vehicle and say, I want to borrow money. This is my security. But I don't want to use the principal amount. I want to take the principal amount, put it into a sound investment vehicle, not these vehicles where you are storing tomorrow by corruptors. Proper business. I want to survive on the interest end out of that principle. We have created a lot of money out of the dead capital. That discussion is not for today. I just wanted you to appreciate that there is a lot of money in the country. It's just that we were not thinking deeply and outside the box. We have a challenge. It doesn't matter whether in the RDCs or in urban areas. We have a huge challenge of informal settlements. The existence of informal settlements in our lives are a huge thorn in the desire to have an upper middle economy status by 2030. You can't say we are a developed country when 60% of the land and population is serviced by pit latrines and open wells in the rural areas. You come to urban areas now, a significant percentage of that population is serviced again by pit latrines and toilets in the form of informal settlements. I spoke about the characteristics of an urban dwelling area, an urban area earlier on. If you live in a city and it has got informal settlement, there are no roads, there is no sewer, there are no services, that area automatically is disqualified from qualifying as a city, as an urban area, because it does not meet those basic characteristics. What that means is Zimbabwe, as it stands right now, all its cities and towns can be disqualified as urban centers because of they are encircled by informal settlements. Informal settlements that are not helping us in terms of development. Those are the challenges. How do we deal with the challenges? Maybe to understand the solution, we need to know the cause of the problem. In the year 2000, government took a deliberate and very brilliant policy to ensure that private sector also participates in the provision of developed stands. They invited private developers and cooperatives and said, come on board, we'll give you land, go and develop and sell to beneficiaries, home seekers. You take that money to recover your cost of development. The guys, the ladies and gentlemen in that world said, now we've been given an opportunity to make money for free. They started selling undeveloped land to desperate home seekers. Pay for your stand, develop, yeah. We'll bring a contractor to develop tomorrow. Nothing happened up to now. People have been living in these informal settlements for over 10, 15, 20 years now, since year 2000. No, nothing has been done. We are saying in Mat North now, today is the day that we must all agree that we must have a big no to the existence of land barons and cooperatives. Because they are a pain in our desire to provide decent accommodation for our people. Where they are in existence, this ministry has been given the responsibility to sanitize, the responsibility to regularize all those informal settlements. And we have invited the same financial players I spoke about, and they've come on board. In Rua on Monday, we handed over an informal settlement to ZB Bank, where we put about 3,000 stands there, 3,000 households. Here in Bulawayo this afternoon, we are visiting McDonald's, which is another informal settlement, which we're going. And NASA and NBS have come on board. They said they are willing. Of course, they are not coming for free. They will come in, regularize, provide title deeds, put roads, water, sewer, and everything. But the home owners will pay a fee towards the land and a fee towards the development of the land. It is at the end of the day, you have got a house with title deeds, because that's what all we need. As it stands right now, if you drop dead, Mama Hamin, you drop dead today, that house of yours which has no title deeds will be sold before your grave is covered. But the same land baron, he is not interested in anything, he's interested in your pocket. So we want to say, all of us, no to the existence of land barons. And we are going to be brutal in the manner in which we are going to be dealing with the formalization of those settlements, because we want people to live peacefully. You must have your stand knowing very well that he has got papers. It's very important. We need everybody there. This is the reason why, this is a huge, massive responsibility. It can't be done by government on its own. Going deeper, it can be done by the Ministry of National Housing on its own. It needs RDCs, it needs urban, our metropolitan cities, it needs everybody, underlying ministries, everyone. So please come on board. We will be coming to your offices as a way forward. We will be coming to your RDCs. We will identify land together with yourselves. Our key responsibility is to hunt for you investors that will come and invest there. Isn't that good? All we need is for you to identify the land. We will help you to identify contractors or developers that will not dupe you and run away with the money. The building societies or banks will become key partners in the documentation process. So we can't do it on our own. We are following exactly the footsteps of His Almighty Jesus Christ, who realized that the work was too much that he needed 12 other men and others to help him to work. We need everybody. I thank you.
Thank you very much, Honorable Minister. You asked a question, or rather you spoke to the issue of how it is possible then to avail houses, social housing. And to me, what comes to mind are a number of strategies. One, you can avail land for somebody to build. The assumption there is that there is serviced land. Or you can avail a built-up house and somebody gets in and they pay for it over time. For us, what we are experiencing on the ground, we may have the land. The challenge is how to service that land. I was glad to hear that you we were now mobilizing resources for servicing of land. Because what was happening prior to this arrangement that is coming in is that you would have land that is available, but we have no capacity to service that land. So for local authorities, what we required, which is what we still require, is the capacitation to service. We can do it in two ways. You can avail the funding to local authorities to service, or you can capacitate them so that they don't keep coming back to the ministry for funding by availing perhaps resources to acquire the plant and equipment for the service. So I'm just wondering if that avenue is open in the resources that you've been mobilizing to say capacitate local authorities to acquire plant and equipment so that they can service and then be in a position to parcel out serviced land. If that does not happen, we run the risk that you were talking about, which happened in 2000, where you would have pieces of land that are available for development. There's pressure on the local authority to provide housing, and then people start parceling out unserviced land. That's when you then get these land barons coming in, because they will purport to have the money to service and provide the service there. So the issues there that I'm putting across is, in the strategies for funding of local authorities, if we could consider something that would capacitate the local authority to do the servicing themselves if they can.
Thank you, Honorable Minister. Mine is on behalf of civil servants. Many of them are unable to purchase or buy houses due to lack of maybe funding. Maybe if you can expound on that facility for civil servants. Thank you.
I'm not so sure whether the ministry has looked at it, the 10% commonage. How are we managing the 10% commonage that local authorities have set aside for use by government? I think there should be a clear framework which we should develop. Because once we do that, the issue of housing for civil servants should not be an issue at all. I think we need to revisit it. What have you done as a ministry to make sure that the 10% commonage is properly managed to the extent to benefit the civil servants? That is part A of my question. Then part B of my question would be, if I'm in Kwekwe and I've already benefited and I'm transferred to Bulawayo, what then happens? Thank you.
Acquisition of land for development from Ministry of Lands by Ministry of Local Government or by another ministry. I'm saying another ministry because we are fighting for that responsibility. It's not yet concluded. Then 3 was the capacity versus what the status quo. The issue of title deeds in our RDCs is now a foregone conclusion. I think Vakuanda can shed more light on that. Government has made a decision that land on the RDCs must be surveyed and titled. That's the only way we can attract the investment that we require. The process resides in local government. I don't want to get deeper into why it's taking long, because I want to stay to my lane as Minister of National Housing and Social Amenities. But the responsibility, what government has said every piece of land in the RDCs must be surveyed and titled so that we invite serious investors. Vakwanda can add more there before I proceed.
Thank you. My intervention very simple and easier. I'll take advantage of the provincial physical planner, Nyandoro. But maybe before he makes a more informed comment, I would want to say at one point about a year or so backwards, the ministry had really taken, Ministry of Law Government had really taken a position to say they identified a number of districts throughout the country, like Sembo, where they were going to do issues related to pegging for people in areas like your district service centers and rural service centers. with the view that if that pegging would result in tightly serving land to title. Mr. Nyandoro, you may want to corroborate what I'm saying. That exercise which was done on a simple basis, I remember Treasury ring-fencing a bit of resources for the ministry to undertake that exercise, but on a sampled basis of sorts.
There are certain treatments where we sample the raw service centers, raw service centers going up in the service centers without that, because some here, but we say low settlement will be raw service centers. In much more than those being in that we did mature is due for tightening, and also the process. The process now is just awaiting casting so that the tightening can be done. But we all the background of that. And now we are moving to the other district where we are going to do 1 month for each district, and then we come back again, we continue up until we cover all the districts. So that's it.
Process. By nature, government is bureaucratic. We know that. And by extension, us as civil servants will become bureaucratic as well. We need to stop being bureaucratic as individuals. We need to operate in a very efficient and effective way. Government is working through the Minister of Finance, is working on a national development plan. One of the strategic pillars under the national development plan is the ease of doing business. It shouldn't take 2 weeks at least to apply for land between the two ministries and avail it to the local authority, the applicant. It shouldn't take at most a month. It must not go beyond a month. That's ease of doing business, and that's what is being pushed through the Minister of Finance. I think when the minister launches the national development strategy or plan, I don't want to get into that program, but I'm allowed to talk about the ease of doing business. That's what we are advocating. Every minister is advocating the ease of doing business. ZIDA is advocating that investors come out of Zimbabwe, they don't have to spend 6 months waiting for a paper or go through several substations to get a paper. It must be done as expeditiously as it can. Capacity versus the status quo. The way I understood you is the Department of Fiscal Planning lacks capacity. I say yes and no. Yes, in the sense that there was a lot of migration of personnel moving from the Department of Fiscal Planning into the neighboring countries or into private sector. Yes, I agree there. No, in the sense that I think the Department of Fiscal Planning is working in a very laissez-faire approach. It's my personal opinion. That's how I look at them. I've been working with them for 8 months now. There is something that I asked them to do the month in November last year. Up to now, I haven't gotten a response. To regularize a layout plan which is already in existence. They had omitted walk-up flats, and the requirement is if you don't include walk-up flats, it will not be approved. Just go back and reverse and leave land for walk-up flats. It has taken 8 months. It has nothing to do with capacity in terms of the number of people that are working on that. It has everything to do with a laissez-faire culture, which unfortunately affects every government department. It's a very unfortunate incident. So here, fiscal planning, we'll be working together. We don't belong to that culture. I'm coming from private sector. I've been in private sector for 30 years. Private sector is driven by a desire for a return on investment. If you have invested your time, you must have a return on that investment. Let's please do what you are employed to do. The second question, I think Vakwanda is the best person to answer that as well.
The 10%. Yes, sir.
are violent, whether the, maybe let me just answer it, it's okay. Availability of land is done through the process that we talked about, from the Minister of Agriculture to Minister of Local Government under the Department of Urban State Land. Again, ease of doing business is the key there. This means, in terms of building houses, I said our responsibility is to promote and facilitate. We are not going to build houses and then say we've built houses to give you. We're inviting players to come and build. That is promotion and facilitation. We are creating an enabling environment, an environment suitable for people to do this business. Yourselves to do business with the investors that will bring. If we bring POSB to Bobi, signed special purpose vehicles, our role will be to provide leadership, which is the facilitation. Your role together with the investors to ensure that we have serviced the land, we have visited your waiting list in terms of category and capacity, whoever affords, in terms of also the type of development that we are doing, whether it's mixed design, we know who falls under social housing, we know who falls under what call it, middle income, we know who falls under high income. We have facilitated. We are going to facilitate or provide leadership. You also talked about that local authorities must be capacitated. Your mother is Minister of Local Government and Public Works. That's the minister that is given with the responsibility of clothing you, not us. We are there to work closely with that ministry to ensure that what we want to achieve, our objective is achieved. But the ministry responsible for your capacitation is local government. And I don't have the competence to get into those details. Please forgive me. Civil servants facility. Social housing is an alternative name for civil servant. By that statement, if I answered you, what you want are probably the modalities, how do we benefit? There's going to be a conscious decision to come up with airtight programs that ensures that you are not disadvantaged like what was happening before. I have no business in championing a cause where I know that you are not going to benefit. I don't want to be punished by God on things that I can avoid. So for as long as I'm superintending this ministry, we'll ensure that those civil servants that are in Bobi will be given preference. Those that are in Lupani will be given preference under social housing. If you want to upgrade yourself, you can pay for the difference. We are speaking with your employer Public Service Commission. We're also speaking with the Salary Services Bureau to ensure that we create proper programs that do not disadvantage civil service. Because for long we've been duped, particularly by the so-called land barons. But let's also help ourselves, help us to help you. Don't facilitate the existence of land barons, because it's dangling a carrot. You eat the carrot in 1 hour, it's finished. But that land baron will have caused pain and suffering to you and others for so many years, maybe to eternity. So let's just say no to the bad way of doing business, which is corruption.